Hi, and welcome to Lesson 1 of the Incrafts Design Sketching Lessons series. You are probably wondering right now why you are looking at a photograph of a toilet roll. Well, this is our muse for today, the model that we will use to learn about line work and also to project light and shadow onto our page. Now, for this lesson, all we'll need is a piece of A4 or A3 paper, an HB pencil, could be a mechanical pencil or a normal pencil, and an eraser. Later on, I'll use a Fineliner pen, but that is completely optional. Alright then, let's get started. Once we have our page in front of us, we first need to decide what we want to draw. I personally start with the toilet roll itself, and then its immediate surroundings, the background and the foreground. At this stage, we are just using soft lines to outline the shape of the toilet roll and its surroundings. For the sake of time, I will be speeding up much of the progress. As you can see right now, I am outlining the sill and then using my mechanical pencil to envision the angle of the window opening wall behind the toilet roll. From this point onward, I will continue to lightly draw the profile lines of the wall corner and the window next to the toilet roll. It is entirely my choice that I should start to apply some detail right now, but only as a guide. Again, I'm utilizing the straight edge of my pen to mimic the angle of the window. So I am starting to draw the window right now, and again, only profile lines. In addition to profile lines, I'm also using a bit of perspective. So if you could imagine behind the window, there should be a point where all these lines would converge. So because I don't have enough space in my page to put that point on, I am imagining where these lines would converge, whether from the sill or the window itself. Just as a reminder of how important it is to use very light lines onto your page, it'll make it easier for you to erase these lines when you make a mistake, as I did. So once we have our work area set out, so once we know where our toilet roll is, where the window is, where the sill is, where the wall corner is, and we have it all set up in front of us, then we can start to add the detail. So again, very lightly, I begin with the immediate object that we are dealing with, which is the toilet roll itself. So there I start to add the little crinkle lines that create that seam where you pull the toilet paper from. So what I'm doing right now, I'm literally creating little shaded areas to the shape of what I see on the photograph. One other technique that you'll often see is a smudging technique. What I'll normally do is I'll shade a little bit or around the area where I want a very constant base of color to be in. And after I shade that area, I smudge it with my finger to sort of spread that color evenly so there are no lines. Again, I am shading it very lightly, but the graphite will be on the surface of the paper, which is then spread over the entire area once you smudge it. And once I have shaded over that area and all the color is even, I can just use an eraser to just fix anything that goes beyond the profile lines that I've just created in order to attain that shape. So as a way to add a little bit more detail when it comes time to add the actual detail around the paper, sometimes what I'll shade to the shape of the crinkles that are caused by the toilet paper itself, as you can see on the screen. And then once I smudge it, not only will you start to even out the color, but also you'll see those little crinkles that are there on the toilet paper itself, which will add a little bit more to the detail at the end of the day. The eraser can be a great tool as well. It's not there only to fix your mistakes. Let's say, if you're working on the shaded area of the object, as we are right now, in order to add, again, that extra bit of detail, you can erase certain portions. You know, in essence, you were making the certain parts of the darker area lighter to add that more texture to it, to make it look almost a little bit more 3D. So what I'm doing with the eraser right now, I'm again adding to those crinkles, because they do have shape and light does bounce off from them, even in the darker areas. So because of their shape, their 3D shape. So by erasing ever so slightly, but not completely, you can mimic that shape. So the shadows on the sill. What I'm doing right now, and I'm again, just like I did in order to get the angle of the wall when I was doing these profile lines, I will start to add a profile to these shadows on the sill itself. So I'll be doing this on the sill, on the wall, and whenever I can, whenever I see that the actual shadow makes a line on the live or inanimate object that's in front of me. And again, I'll be using my eraser to sort of lose some of that color, or maybe gain a little bit more color with the graphite pencil, in order to mimic the reflection that's on the photograph on the top left-hand corner of the screen. And you'll see what I mean when I do it. So as to mimic what we're seeing on the photograph on the top left-hand corner, I'm utilizing some dark lines to sort of create that edge of the sill. And by making some lines, as per the photograph, darker and leaving some areas lighter, you can start to create that illusion of reflection, that effect of reflection that we are currently seeing in front of us on the photograph. And on the sill edge, again, I can start to create very dark, thin lines, just to add a little bit more to the actual detail of the sill, maybe even enhancing the whole reflective effect we're trying to achieve that we see in real life. So here, again, I am coloring, I'm smudging, I'm coloring and smudging. And in this section, you'll see in full effect exactly what I meant about creating an even color on a area that you need an even color. For, in this case, the wall under the window. So we want that even color to be as per the photograph itself, but we don't want it to be too dark. We want it to have that constant color in that entire area, and as it goes to that wall corner, then it starts to get darker. As you can see, I'm already starting to apply that here. So the technique does not change. The only difference right now is I'm applying a little bit more pressure, so that will give me darker lines. And by making darker lines, I'm applying more graphite to the surface of the page and then smudging it further. And that would create that darker, more even area that I want to achieve. So those thin dark lines are there for these type of details. For instance, is this crack that I am drawing on the wall itself. It's actually a little fleck of paint that's chipping off the wall. And that's exactly what these little dark lines are for. So again, to mimic what we see on the page, right after this I'll jump off to the window. And on the window itself, there's that straight dark line, the sealant or the rubber grommet that's dividing the outside with the inside and the window frame. I'll be utilizing the same method to create that line, so just very dark and thin lines. Also, do not be afraid to go rough if you have to. This is a sketch, it doesn't have to be photorealistic. On the photograph, you'll see a shape that seems to be hanging off the shadow created by the window frame onto the wall. So I'm just trying to add that in, and again, using very light lines, I just draw that to the best of my ability to the shape of what I see. Now, that is actually created by what it seems to be, and this is going to sound gross, it seems to be bird poop that just, was found on the window on the outside, and if it's there, I have to add it in. And it's again, it must be attention to detail. So what you see, that's what you must draw. And the more detail you give, the better it will turn out to be. And here comes the rubber seal from the window. So in the beginning, when we drew those profile lines, and once you've shaded it, it turns out that they appear to be darker than the actual shaded area that we've just done. So the best thing to do is to just erase them as best as you can without affecting the shaded area, while still keeping that straight profile coming down. Again, using your mechanical pencil or your normal pencil to create a shadow line and comparing it to the actual photograph is the best thing to do. Because when you're doing that, you're comparing it to those lines of perspective that I've mentioned before, or at least to the best of your ability, that it looks realistically possible that it follows the perspective. So that's the joint line just below the window and above the sill. So now I'm adding detail again by using again soft lines, but using the left hand picture as my reference. I will try and mimic those wrinkles, those crinkles on the toilet paper itself. But because this is again the lighter side of the toilet roll, let's use very, very soft lines. So if you want to draw lines on the darker side, use them darker. If you want to draw lines or want to show texture on the lighter side, then use very, very soft lines. Now this is a tricky shadow line. I don't see any point in using straight lines because the actual shadow is not exactly straight. It's a little bit more organic. However, I do have points of reference in the shadows that I already drew around the toilet paper and under the window. And I can use that as a sort of a freehand reference to draw this shadow now. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to draw the rubber seal that connects the window pane with the window frame. And then right after that, you'll see that I'll start to create these vertical lines that show the sort of like beading. What that beading actually is, in reality, it's the metallic frame that separates the two panes of glass. Because these two panes of glass, they're double glazed. Basically what it means is it's again 2, 5 or 6 millimeter panes next to each other with the spacing between them. And now this spacing, which is normally either filled with a gas or filled with air, this just insulates the glass itself. I'm not going to add that much detail into the sketch. All I really need to do is just add this sort of beading and not add any shadows to it. By not adding any shadows, you'll make it seem metallic, since this is black and white anyway. In any case, you'll see when I start drawing it. And now we're down to the window reflections. Basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to implement shading again and just try my best to recreate what we're seeing using nothing but shading, smudging, and a little bit more shading. And right after that, I'll be using my Fineliner pen. Now, I am utilizing a 0.1 millimeter Fineliner pen because I just love them. I like to sketch with them. I like to add some more lines of detail. They're just wonderful tools and I really, really like them. And the thinner the pen, the tip, the better it will look to me. And if you think of it like a cake, these are just for garnish. These are just there just to make it look slightly better and a little bit more realistic. It also adds contrast to it as well. And now the very last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take my mechanical pencil, and much like I use the fine liners to add a little bit more detail onto the darker areas, I'll use my mechanical pencil to add a little bit more detail now, with a little bit more hardness onto the areas where I want these lines to be. So I'm looking at the photograph on the top left hand corner, and I'm seeing where all these lines intersect and maybe add that little bit more crispness to it. And we're done. What I'll do next is put the two images next to each other so that we can compare our final result to the actual object. I'll be using this channel to upload videos, instructional videos such as these, and to be quite honest, they're going to be very varied. It's going to be anything from cartoons to still life such as this video, as well as my architectural work that I also enjoy doing so much. Feel free to subscribe, like this video, and if you want to be up to date to any new videos or uploads, please ring that bell and keep on sketching.